but it all supports the whole system, and we're part of that whole system. And so if we can change minds, I think we could do really great things.
Joining us today is ACC biology instructor Heather Lewis, who is going to talk about the pollinator project on campus and how a new grant will help benefit the program. Tell me, first of all, just a little bit about the pollinator project itself. I know we've had it, I think since COVID is when we first started it.
Yeah, we started back in about 2020. It sort of was just this idea that Dwight Rhodes and I had about what can we do with that space out there adjacent to the greenhouse. And I had a friend that worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and she's like, oh, we need some people to grow some milkweed. Would you guys like to do that? So they came and we met with them and they gave us some starter plants. And we had initially intended to just grow up some milkweed in the greenhouse and maybe plant some out there. And then it just sort of blossomed from that. We started planting some of the milkweed, scattering some seeds, just kind of doing some stuff out in the open area. And then we got the idea, oh, maybe we should apply for one of these innovative grants. Mm-hmm. And so in 2021, we applied for one of those and got some money to plant some more seeds, to do some work out there. So we had set up a little area. It was initially pretty small to start with, and we had kind of some roped off areas, and we put up some homemade signs, and we've just sort of piddled out there and played around.
Kind of the concept was, though, to just let it be.
To let it be, yeah. This would be a completely natural area. Basically, these types of habitats were dominated by fire back a long time ago, and fire is very natural. And so we don't have that anymore, being that we're in this giant metropolis area. You can't have fires going. Now, if someone let me burn the prairie, I'd be super excited. So you have to kind of use either just physical hand maintenance to maybe remove some of the woody plants that you don't want to get in there.
Like
because
the tallow trees.
Yeah, like the tallow.
Growing all around mine
Yeah, so there's definitely some tallow out there that need to be removed still, but we try to keep up on that. And so it is pretty much just, you could say, oh, it's a vacant, unmowed field, and it looks...
Has it been mowed since then, or not?
It has. We've mowed it several times. We've tried some different management tools on it. Because you can't burn, mowing is really your next closest disturbance. And so you have to have kind of some disturbance periodically just to keep things out that you don't want there. Yeah. But the idea is to just let it go. Once you get the right community in there, it kind of takes care of itself.
And what's the purpose of it? What is y'all's hope for doing this?
The ultimate hope is to basically bring some attention about conservation. These were the native habitats that were here, and they're just gone. There was once about 9.5 million acres of coastal prairie. We're down to less than 1%. And so they serve a lot of purposes. Flood maintenance, the root systems are really super deep. And so
there's a lot of erosion control,
There's a lot of erosion control. And then if you look at the wildlife and pollinators, that's kind of the biggest thing that we sort of started with, was the idea of creating just a small space for pollinators, something that the community could see, and then something we could start to incorporate into our classes for the students.
Does it have any sort of research qualities for it?
We haven't done any direct research yet. Hoping that we can start to maybe incorporate some more specific things as we get into maybe having more opportunity with our upcoming collaboration with the Native Prairie Association. I had taken a class on basically monitoring for monarchs, and so initially we had thought about maybe incorporating that in, because the eggs are super tiny and you have to look for them, and then you can go back and check those plants for the different stages of the caterpillars and then monitor. We had talked about doing some just vegetation assessments for biodiversity in certain areas. So there's a lot of things we could potentially do. I know that one of the schools in Katy, they have a big pocket prairie project, and I'm fairly certain they just published a whole thing on carbon sequestering, and they did some sort of scientific measurement on how much their prairie actually sequesters. So there's definitely a lot of possibilities from very small to potentially bigger projects. Right now, we've just gotten students out there to actually help plant. We did a prairie stomp last fall, and then this spring we actually went out and did some insect sweeps, and students had to do a photography project where they had to take pictures of plants and seeds and insects.
So tell me how this grant program is going to help you guys make improvements to that area?
So we just signed last week, President Exley signed an MOU with the Native Prairie Association of Texas. That organization actually has a grant for $6,000, and that grant is through the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. And they were looking for a project area to implement and utilize that grant money. And so the past 2 semesters, I've had a representative from the Native Prairie Association come speak in my biology course. And so when our speaker from the spring was out, he had mentioned about this grant, and he walked around our prairie and he was like, wow, you've got a really great start to this. I have some funding that I think we could really improve this project. And so it started from there.
And so what are some of those improvements y'all are looking to make?
I think we will definitely get some volunteers from the students, the communities. They have a pretty large volunteer base. And so we'll do some invasive removal. So there's definitely some tallow out there that need to come out that are just growing up in the prairie. There's probably a few other species out there that we'd want to try to hand remove. But the idea would be to just sort of supplement with additional prairie plants. And they have access to all those, and they would provide those. They're going to help us with the tools, the people.
And the grant's going to help fund a lot of the
the
equipment
grant,
you need.
yes. So the grant, that's the plan, is to help basically just improve what we already have out there and build upon what's already there. So it's basically been Mr. Rhodes and I all along, just the two of us sort of, like I said, doing our thing out there and trying different stuff. And we have had, we've disked it up one time, and we've had them mow out there a few times. And so we've finally kind of
gotten to... So is that renewal kind of a key part of the process?
It is, but once you get things going, you don't even necessarily have to keep doing that. Like a once-a-year maintenance mow can be really helpful, but in our case, if we just didn't have anyone to mow it and we can get it established with...
In other words, letting it go for a while is not going to hurt anything either.
No. And so if we can get the desirable plants in there, then we can kind of monitor it and maybe do a little bit more handwork, removing any tallow that might make their way in or things like that.
So I know that this is a new movement, and it's something I've been paying attention to, is this kind of idea that maybe it's to just letting, I guess, nature take its course.
Absolutely. It's just so much more beneficial to everyone. I believe the gentleman's name is Doug Tallamy. He's kind of promoting the idea of a national park across the whole country, with if each person in their neighborhood had a small habitat, then you build this large habitat on a grand scale. And so with development, especially in prairies around here, it's flat. It's generally treeless. It's prime land for development, which is why we've seen such a huge loss. And so the idea of just putting a small pollinator project in your yard, it doesn't even have to be big. It could be as big as a little kiddie swimming pool. It could be your whole front yard. It just doesn't matter. But if you can create that space for these pollinators who are crucial to our survival, and I think
this is the big agricultural area, which, you need that for just about any crop that you make. So.
You do, and I think it gets lost on people how important our pollinators are, and not just the butterflies, but you've got a lot of native bees and wasps. You have bats. You have moths. And so there's a lot of things people don't see or necessarily recognize, but so many of our food crops require pollinators. If you create a desert of plants that aren't going to support them, then you're not going to have the pollinators anymore. And it's like the circle of life. You have to have the basis all the way up to the top, and then it has to be able to go around and around. And so a lot of our pollinators are declining. A lot of our grassland bird species are declining. And so when you start to see the fall in one area, then you start to end up seeing the collapse of everything. So if you want to look at it from, again, the human perspective, temperature is a big deal around here. It gets blazing hot, right? So these prairie plants are used to being out in the blazing heat because they're out in the open. So they don't require a lot of water, and water is a big deal. And so if you've got these deep root systems, you've got these plants that are used to being here, used to growing in those conditions, you don't have to water them. And that just goes to, speak about
it's the kind of garden that anybody can grow.
Yeah, and it's any native plant. It doesn't have to be a prairie plant. You could do rain gardens, you could do swales. There's all sorts of cool things that you can do just to boost a small area of your yard, attract some of those organisms, support wildlife. The insects are critical to supporting birds. So it's just a whole lot of different things. And to me, it looks beautiful. And kind of jumping back to the temperature thing, I was just reading the other day that monarchs can't fly if it's above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, but taller grass will lower the temperature by like 10 to 15 degrees. So by not even mowing your lawn, letting it go a little bit high, that can even help reduce some of the heat. And then these prairie plants, they can get huge. I have a small little pocket prairie. I mean, it's probably like 50 by 50, and my plants are over 10 feet high, and they're just loaded with bumblebees, and it's fantastic.
So
I love it.
Did you plant anything in there? Or is it?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, right now it's basket flower. I got a lot of eastern gamma grass, some button bush, so it's kind of a whole mix, some liatris, but it's pretty cool because you can also see underneath it all are these pathways. And so you get these really tall plants, pollinators love them, and then you get the pathways. And so, again, it's little microclimates that are created for maybe some of the smaller animals you don't see that move about at night. But it all supports the whole system, and we're part of that whole system. And so if we can change minds, I think we could do really great things. And we kind of got our starter seeds from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and then we've just kind of worked on our own at this point. Talked with some of the native prairie people, and I just recently completed my native landscape certification through the Native Plant Society of Texas, and so hoping to kind of incorporate that into the whole project.
Have y'all had like a lot of volunteers show up to help you with this as well, or?
We have not done a lot of advertising for volunteers. I do have a few students who have definitely shown some interest, and then the
Set
ones
aside
that
some of their own time,
right,
so.
yeah, and then I have the ones that they had to go out for class, and they were reluctant at first, but I think a large majority of them after were like, "That was so cool, that was so fun, I really enjoyed that." And a couple of them have offered to come back this summer or this fall. They would like to do some more work. So, and I'm hoping then now with our collaboration with the Native Prairie Association, we'll be able to do a lot more to get community involved. And I know there's a lot of master gardeners, and again, their volunteer base, and then
the extension office around here, they have a huge master gardeners program.
Okay, yeah. So there's definitely the hope to get more people involved as we actually do some major work. So.
And so what were the scouts doing here?
Oh, so the scouts, one of the Boy Scouts, he created some benches for his Eagle Scout project, and they're placed around out there so people can go out and enjoy the prairie. And then we have a couple of Girl Scouts right now working on their Silver Award, I believe. And so they're doing some stuff with growing out some plants, and they're going to help participate with some of that planting in the fall. So.
All right, well, thanks for coming to talk to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. To read about these stories and more, visit allencollege.edu/news.